All right, guys, we're going to get started. Um, so we're going to continue this week with our discussion from last week on AI agents. So usually I start a course, we start from the beginning, right? 520. This course starts kind of at the applications and then, drilling down into the different things. So currently the main application is AI agents. I will be finishing that topic, I assume, today, and then we're going to drill down into other things, but you'll have a good background, I think. So last week we covered Crew AI. So these are the two libraries, Crew AI, and you saw some examples. I believe we took one agent, right? We took one agent and which was all Llama 3.2, and we probably did some tasks, right? Um, did we do multi-agent on it? Do you guys remember? I don't believe we did. And then also tools, right? So those two topics we didn't do. So I will cover those during the second half of today. Multitask agents, which basically means two agents, like two Llama 3s working together. I don't believe I did that last week. So one agent, right? Yeah, great. So we'll continue with that with Crew AI. Obviously, that's the power. That's the name Crew AI means a crew working together to solve a problem. Then we're going to do tools, also with Crew AI. And finally, we're going to build from scratch something. So how would that work? That's obviously complex, so it'll just be a basic introduction, but it should give you some insight into how the libraries work. During the first half of today, we're going to cover the other library that's a big one, smolagents. That's from Huggingface. So we're going to try to use an API to talk to ChatGPT, and also the smolagents is from Huggingface, so it uses the Huggingface hub. So we're going to load some tokens. So that's the idea. Keep in mind my demo using ChatGPT. I have to pay to use ChatGPT, so you may not be able to replicate that part, and it's expensive actually. So if you start doing a whole bunch of queries and things like that, they'll bill you. So just be aware, right? So if you want to follow along. Now, smolagents with Hugging Face is not, and we will use the Quen model for that, Quen instruction model. So there's been a lot of developments actually in the landscape right now. Things that have been found out are that they're basically the reasoning has advanced a lot. Two papers came out that are really very important. We'll probably be reading these. The inference time compute, I think it's called, and it's basically you ask a question to the model, and instead of the model just giving you an answer right away, it produces tokens, right? And then it analyzes these tokens, gives it more information to do more predictions and so on. So it's thinking about it, looking at what it said, reading it, producing another answer, reading it, and that apparently, and it's modifying, it's improving the performance. And then, of course, we got a really very important paper out of China that basically kind of concluded that it basically they created a model like ChatGPT, not at the level, but the level of I think the O1 version, and it's free, right? Open source, everything, and it can do reasoning like ChatGPT, which costs money, obviously. So that's a big deal, actually. Very for those, think of Elon Musk and Meta who have spent so much money building a data center that has what is it, 1 million GPUs. That's a lot of money. And they made it with less, right? So they made it with fewer GPUs, and they figured out some interesting things actually in the paper about reinforcement learning also. Just letting the model kind of learn by itself is pretty interesting. So those are two very important papers, I think, because they actually take us from, to the reasoning stage of the large language model, which, as you know, is kind of crazy, right? And so we'll be looking at those. And then finally, Titans came out, which is like an improvement on transformers. So we'll be reading at least those three papers for now, and I will post them. I haven't posted them yet, but I will post them today or tomorrow on the Brightspace. So get them. They're long. They're like 50 pages long. So just start reading them, and I'll be talking about them and asking questions. But this is kind of it's a grad level class, and we need to stay at the state of the art, basically. All right, and you can have questions and opinions about them. All right, so that's kind of the state of the papers. So we're going to look at, as I said, small agents, this other library from Huggingface, and we're just going to do AI agents, see what we can do with them, and then obviously it would be nice if we could build these libraries ourselves, right? So that we'll conclude that with that today. So everything is loaded on the GitHub, so you can just get it from there. This is going to be under transfer learning. Let me do it here, actually. So let's go to the course website. Content. So AI agents. So I provided the link here. And this is kind of where we are. So I'll probably just add the papers here. So if we click on this link, basically Crew AI is here, everything related to that. And this section here is the small agents code. So all the code that I'll use today is there. You can just get it from there. And basically we're just going to illustrate. So the key things is I'm going to have to get the token. So I'll have to sign in to Huggingface, basically. And so that's one of the things. So we're going to need OpenAIs. So we're using APIs. So I'm going to need OpenAI tokens, and I'm going to need small agent tokens. So we can do something like Huggingface tokens. User access tokens. Not sure if I'm signed in, so I need to log in. So let me kind of need to get this tokens. Okay, so I'm signed in now to the Huggingface website. So if you've never been to Huggingface, right? These should be free. So what are access tokens? Basically, you have a number. It's a long number that you're going to get. I like this process, actually. You get the token, you use it, and then you delete it, and you can get a new one, and they're basically being refreshed. So let me make sure they're not display. Yeah, here we go. So I don't have any tokens, actually. There it is. I have to create a new one, right? So this is what you guys need to do. Does that make sense, guys? So if you don't have a Hugging Face account, just create one. It should be free. This should cost no money, but we are going to need to use this because our small agents library is going to talk to the Hugging Face hub. Are there any questions about this part? Nope. All right. So I'm going to proceed so you can follow along. The first example, which is the leopard example. It's like the classic example. It's very interesting, actually, how that works. but we are going to need to create an environment also. So I'll create the token in a second. I just need to show you the commands. So obviously we're going to use our Jupyter notebook, Anaconda 3, Anaconda prompt. All right, here we are. So I'm going to navigate dir. There's the desktop, so cd desktop. Dir. TS530 Spring, so cd TS530. Spring, dir. One Jupyter notebook here. I guess we did just one. Okay. So I'm going to do, I don't want to mix these, so I'm just going to create it. Okay. All right. So new folder, and we need to create a new environment, of course. And we're going to install the library. So we're going to need to install smolagents. We might need to install LangChain and item LLM. So item LLM is what's going to help us actually to bring in ChatGPT into the mix. So if you remember last Wednesday, what I said was in an environment, you're probably going to have a whole bunch of local models like Llama 3.2, you'll have Quen, and then there will be some tasks that require like the most intelligent model, and you'll have to pay for that one, right? So in that case, through the API, you can bring in ChatGPT or Anthropic's, I think Claude or something. So let's take a look at Conda environment list. All right, so I do have a Pi 310 agent AI. That may be what we were using last week, right? This is what we were using last week. I don't think there will be a clash between Crew AI and small agents, so I'm just going to use that library. Hopefully there's no issue. The only requirement for these is they have to be greater than 3.10. I noticed that for both of them, they were using 3.10 or above. So I'm going to start with that one and activate I 310 agent AI. All right, so our environment has been created. We know we got Jupyter in this one, right? Because we were using it last time. So I'm going to do Jupyter notebook. Oh, actually, before I forget, before doing this, we have to do the tokens. So that's the thing. So that's how this works. So there's a couple of ways of doing this. But one nice way of doing this is you definitely don't want to hard code your token on your Jupyter notebook. So you do that, you load it on your GitHub and it's ChatGPT's or OpenAI's token, somebody could use it. You know, you're going to be paying for that. So what you do is to hide the token is you put it in an environment variable. You can load that up on the terminal, and then from the code, you just bring it in. So we're going to take that approach. So that I'll give you the commands, and then I'm gonna actually get the token. So you're not gonna see that part, but just assume that I would do the following command. So I'm gonna do CLS enter. export, and then give it a name. So I think the name that I have in the Jupyter is HF underscore token. All right, so that's going to be the environment variable. And then you will assign to it the actual token. So it's going to be a random sequence of values, which is what you get from smolagents. Okay. Copy it. I think with some of these, you can only copy it once, and then you can't see it again for security reasons. So once this is done, you press enter, and the environment variable is stored there, and that's basically it. Do you guys understand? Everyone with me? All right, so that's it. So you just press enter. So what I'm going to do now is, if you see here, I'm going to go to the Huggingface environment. It should be just create new token. It'll create it. I'll copy it, and that's it. And you can replicate the same. And you can make it read. I set it to read, and it worked fine for me. Because, yeah. And then, so that it might ask you read, write, or something else. You can just, as I tested all of these, they work fine. Okay, so then this I can show you. So then you can see I have a token, given a name, it's got the value in there, and I already copied it into my clipboard. So I'm gonna do now add it to the environment variable. Does that make sense? Yeah, this kind of thing you never find in the tutorials, and then you're like, how do I get it to talk? Right, so, but yeah, so now you move to, and ChatGPT and OpenAI and all that's the exact same thing, just on their website. Literally the same. All right, so now as you can see, I'm going to paste it in here, and it'll show the whole thing. Go ahead and you paste it in there. Let's see. Give me a second. It's giving me an error with the export command on Windows terminal. Did I mistype this? I guess I tested this part on my Mac, but not Windows. We try set. Well, set worked. At the end of the day, it's we just need the variable. So here in Windows, environment variables in Windows, they're typically named to list all environment variables. Set an environment. Okay, so it says to use the word set. Okay, so I tried that. So hopefully that'll work. So then I should have. So basically, I had to end up typing set instead of export, and then HF. Uh, the variable token, and then the parameters. I put mine in double quotes. If that doesn't work, we can remove the double quotes. Okay. So now let's test this. Test this. All we need is from the Jupyter notebook. We need to load it basically. Hopefully. So let's go ahead now and launch the Jupyter notebook. So Jupyter notebook, we're gonna load it, and basically we're gonna try to communicate with via the API to smolagents and Huggingface and do the leopard at Ponce de Arts example, basically, that they provided. So here I have, I'm going to click Python 3. All right, so I created it. We're going to do this. I'm going to rename it. Just going to call it in class. In this example, I'm calling leopard at Ponce. Okay, so let's go ahead, save it, rename it. All right, so the thing I need to test now if it can grab the environment variable. So I'm going to, otherwise I'm going to have to hard code it, which is not ideal. But I'll delete the token at the end of the code. So import OS, and then here I would need following OS dot environ Huggingface token, and then OS dot get end Huggingface token. All right, so basically, in essence, we need to grab that. We could hard code it here, but we need to assign it to this library. So let's go ahead and try it out. Okay, no errors. Well, that's good, right? Everyone with me? So let me see if I can print out the variable. I just want to see it. So I did load it. Does that make sense, guys? Everyone with me? And that's it. That's in essence how you get to establish an API connection. With OpenAI, usually you can import a library. So import OpenAI, and then it'll have a field, OpenAI.token. Or for our example today, we'll use a library, another library that we will need to install. And that's essentially with this, once you've created your account, once you've paid for OpenAI, you can use that AI agent from your Python code and build your AI agent. Okay, and this would have worked on Crew AI. I just haven't provided an example for that one, but I will provide it for smolagents. All right, so now we should be ready. All that out of the way. So I'm gonna make a note here. So this is Huggingface, Huggingface, and agents. And this is leopard at punts the art. So I like this example for several reasons. One of them is I don't know what punts the art is, right? So what is that? And I'm a human, right? So how do we expect an AI agent to know what it is, right? So it's got to figure it out. And then what is the leopard part, right? So it's a very interesting problem that I really think captures the essence of AI agents really well. All right, so let's try to install the libraries that you will need. So first, let's change this to cell type, markdown. All right, then let's add a few cells here for the installation libraries. So we're going to need the smolagents library. I think I've mentioned this is like the third iteration of AI agents from Huggingface. So they've done two that didn't, people, I guess, didn't use that much, and maybe they were convoluted, etc. This one is their newest iteration. So pip install small agents. So we need to install that. We're going to install LangChain and light LLM. Right, so while it's doing that, I can add the other ones. So pip install LangChain. Pip install light LLM. Light. All right. So it's taking a while. Are you guys installing it? So hopefully it'll finish. Okay. So gave us a warning. Pip dependency resolver does not currently take into account all packages that are installed. This behavior is, of course, is the source of the following dependency conflicts. So I think I did get this before and it wasn't an issue. Otherwise, we can try another command, but I believe that was not an issue when I saw that before for sure. All right, so let's comment that one out and let's comment this one out. Now let's install LangChain. Okay. Okay, this one, no issues. And then let's do light LLM, which is what you will see we can try to use to connect to ChatGPT. All right, so install light LLM. Click on that. Right. And there we go. So the library is installed correctly. It hopefully. So we are going to test that now. save my work. I've already loaded the token. So let's proceed to load the library. Okay. All right, so I'm going to add the libraries here. I'm going to import. So I'm going to do from small agents, import code agent, comma, DuckDuckGo search tool. So that's a search engine. Duck, duck, go search tool. And we're going to load uppercase H, HF, which is Huggingface, API model. All right, so I'm loading these three libraries from small agent. And we're, let's see if we get any issues here. Running. Okay, so these three libraries, if you guys remember the analogy that I gave you last week, I talked about a scuba diver, right? And if you remember, I said it's a marine biologist who has the knowledge in their head as a person. They're going to treat a whale or a dolphin. They need to go into the ocean. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. So they need to go into the ocean, but a human to go into the ocean needs to put on a wetsuit, a snorkel, an oxygen tank. And then once they get there to treat the whale or the dolphin, they need some tools like a probe, an injection. You remember that analogy, right? Well, here we are. So that analogy, if you look, it's like they read my mind, right? I read this. But you can see actually, this is the person, the marine biologist, because we used the API to grab the model. In this case, we're going to use Quen, but we can use ChatGPT, Mini, or whatever it is. DuckDuckGo search tool is the tool, like the probe, the injection, etc. And code agent is what wraps around the model here. And so that's the wetsuit, the tank, and everything. You see, that's just the same analogy given these three libraries. So we ran this successfully already. So we've got the libraries. All the hard work hopefully is done. And now we can just define our agent and then run it, basically. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and create an agent. And I'm going to say here, so code agent wraps, code agent. And then as I said, towards the end of class today, we're going to try to, I'm not saying we're going to replicate code agent because that's too much, but we're going to just look at how we could, play with something like that, how we could build our own, because really at the end of the day, this is what you guys would do. If you're starting your company or you're working for a company and doing this from scratch, right there, right? That's the code that you need to play with and modify. All right, so we're going to define here a couple of things. In code agent, I'm going to define tools, and notice that you don't even have to define just one tool, but you give it multiple tools. And what the model will do by default is it'll try to use all these tools until it finds the solution that it thinks is correct. You see that? So you give it tools. So it's going to be a list in this case, and we just give it DuckDuckGo search tool. I'm going to say DuckDuckGo search tool. All right, so that's just one. And then we're going to specify the model that we're going to use. And by default, although we can specify this model directly, by default, it uses Quen, at least the last time I checked. So these things move so fast, honestly, that it's hard to tell. All right, so H, uh, F is already there. And then API model, right? Just like that. And so this instantiates basically your LLM. All right. So remember, we're not doing any training or anything like that, or even fine tuning. We're just using the models as they are and using this capability. So let's go ahead and run this, see what happens. Okay, no errors, so we're good. All right, and now, believe it or not, we're there. All right, so remember that LLMs work with prompts, right? Prompt engineering is like a whole course, like a whole thing. I may at some point in the semester cover a little bit of prompt engineering, but you can read. There's a lot of good documentation out there, but it's kind of important, maybe less important as the models become smarter, but yeah. All right, so now what we do is we do agent dot run. And here we're going to provide the prompt that we want. Do you guys see that? So we're basically going to do that. So we're going to ask it a question. How many seconds would it take for a leopard at full speed, to run through punt des arts? Question mark. That's it. That's the question. So anyone know what punt des arts is? I don't. I didn't. But apparently it's a bridge in Paris. That's important, right? Because you're asking, how long would it take for a leopard in seconds at full speed to run through this thing? So what does the large language model have to do? It has to figure out what it is. Then it has to figure out how long it is. Then it has to figure out what's the speed of a leopard at full speed. And then it has to, based on all of that, make the calculation and give you the answer. Do you see that? What does that mean? It means it doesn't know that possibly. Like it's not in its weights what it is. So what does that mean? It means it needs to use a tool. In this case, a search engine. So it needs to literally Google this, get information from Googling, analyze the information, and use that information to answer questions. Got it? All right, so let's go ahead and run this, see what happens. Token seems invalid, it says. Okay, so it's a token error. So it tried, so you can see it tried doing this several times, but it couldn't connect because of the authorization header is correct, but the token seems invalid. Let me just try to hard code this. Okay, better, right? Yes. All right, we're in business. All right, so I think what happened was in Windows and Mac, they don't work the same. I think I put double quotes around my token, and in Windows, apparently it may not like it. Maybe, obviously, what I did here is I hard coded it, and whatever, I'll delete it later. All right, so let's see. Oh, it finished. you're getting the same error. Let me just make sure mine finished, and then I can. It seems to be doing it. It said it's six. No, it hasn't given the answer. The answer is 9.62. Okay, so mine worked. All right, so if you're having an issue, uh, yeah, so did you make it read and created it like this? Yeah, make it read. Remember I said create your token, copy it, just hard code it, and then delete it. Don't put it in double quotes if you're using Windows. When I did it on Mac, I think I did it with double quotes. Does that make sense, guys? Did anyone else get it to work that's trying? Read just, yeah, it'll give you three options. So, um, see, create new. See this? Don't click on all of these because it's too complicated. Just click on read here. You see that? And then you don't have to set anything. Put the name there and create token. You don't, up here it says fine grain, read, write. That's what you need to change. Set it to read, give it a name, create the token. That's it. Any other questions, guys? All right, so let's go ahead and continue. So actually it finished, so we can look at the output and analyze what happened. And I guess you guys are hard to impress, but this is very impressive. Okay, so it's writing Python code, first of all, to solve this problem. So Quen, this large language model, given the prompts, tries to write Python code that then it can use to solve things. So look at what it also, it searched the web. Just give me a second. It searched the web, right? So it basically, you can see here how many seconds, that's the question. Notice it's gonna import from the Huggingface Quen 2.5 coder 32 billion Instructor. All right, so this is a large language model that has been fine-tuned to accept instructions. It generates code. And this is what Huggingface is using by default for their small agents library. But you can change that to another large language model. So then notice it starts to like think, right? It says, okay, I need a search engine. Notice that it figured out that it doesn't need to search the whole thing. It just says length of Ponte Arch Bridge. So it, what is that, right? So maybe it already knew that Ponte Arch is a bridge, given that it was trained on the whole internet. That might have been a Wikipedia page. And so it created this variable length Ponte Arch, which basically tells you it's already understanding, okay, I'm gonna need, this is a variable. I need to know that length. And it's going to print it. So notice that it does a search, right? It's searching online. It's going to Wikipedia, Artifacts, this one here, something Europe, Tour de France. So it's going to a whole bunch of websites and doing a query, collecting some text, right? And somewhere in here, as I read it, it says the original bridge has 9 arches, was 155 meters in length. So it found a size for it, 155 meters, 155. So here, the bridge is composed of 9 arches and spans approximately 155 meters. It's starting to find enough evidence, right, of what it is. And and it did it 10 times, 10 searches. Right? Gives you the number of tokens it used and everything. That was step 1, right? So then step 2, or the next step, it needs to do another search. Query top speed of a leopard, right? So it's asking another question, right? What does, identified it's a leopard, what's the top speed of it? And it created this variable top speed in Python. So once again, it goes to acanimals.com, africafreak.com, and various other websites looking for information about the speed of a leopard. And here I think it says can run up to 35 to 40 miles per hour, right? So it's starting to find some information. And then once it's got that, it found, you can see here, that the leopard top speed is in kilometers per hour is 58. 58 kilometers per hour. It needs the answer in seconds, so it needs to do the conversion. That's another thing it needs to do. You can see that there, leopard top speed, kilometers per hour, does the conversion. I didn't even check the math. Like, it doesn't matter. It's even if it gets it wrong right now, it's going to get it right eventually. Because it's the point is it's thinking, right? And that's amazing. And so you got now the leopard top speed in ms, meters per second, I assume. And it's now, it prints it, and it's got some information there, execution logs. So now it's written the information into variables in Python, pure Python. Bridge length is in meters, 155. It adds a little comment in there that it's probably reading. 16 point, and leopard top speed in ms is 16.11 after it does the conversion. Time to run through bridge. Time to run. Oh, yeah, the question is how many seconds does it take, right? So it basically needs to answer the question in time. So final answer, 9.62 seconds. For those of you that want to check the math, go ahead. But I'm just happy to see how it reasons, right? It's very interesting. It's amazing, right? And that's it. This is an example. That's why I like using this example as the first one, because I think it really shows us. You saw I did it in real time. This wasn't something that I had, and we were just able to query. Yeah. So that's your first example of small agents, just to kind of illustrate and kind of drive AI agents, which is, as I said, I'm gonna finish this sequence today, but I think I provided enough examples, and you guys can obviously build much more complex approaches. All right. Any questions or comments? Yeah, go ahead, sir. The what? The hard coding of what? Oh, yeah, sure. I think the other thing would have worked too is just that when I did it in the terminal, I put it in double quotes. And I think it maybe added double quotes to it possibly. And so that was the error. Here, obviously, if I don't use double quotes, it's going to think it's a variable because this is Python. But that's the example. Other questions before we move on to the next example? All right, great. So I really like an example where we have a tool. It's another really amazing one. We'll take a look at that in a second. We do know everything works now. So I'll just be using this. I'm going to create a new Jupyter notebook. And we're just going to look at another example of small agents. And then we have to do the chat GPT. Yeah, sure. Which part? Down? Here? Sorry. There? Hmm? All right, so this one is very interesting. This one kind of starts to show you how you can create. The goal of this example from the Huggingface library is to give you an intuition as to how you can create your own tools. As I was mentioning to you guys, it makes sense that there could be a market that develops around tools, right? So if you're an expert in doing tax calculations or something, you might develop a tool for taxes, and then an AI agent could use it or to read spreadsheets. That's a market right there. I mean, that people would probably spend money on or pay money for. All right, so this just shows you how to do a tool. So let's create a new example. All right, let's add a few cells in here. We're gonna just add some of the same things. We're gonna need import OS. Import OS. We're gonna need the token, of course, since we're talking to Huggingface. And we're going to import the libraries, and then we'll go from there. All right, so in this example, we are going to create your own tools, basically, although we're just going to use, instead of importing DuckDuckGo, right, like magically from smolagents, this is more an object, a class that we're defining in our Python code, and then we're going to use it. But we use kind of like when you do Torch and you create your neural network, but you import NN into that class, we're doing some class inheritance in a similar way. So everything else should be the same here. Yeah, so we're going to need an additional library here called tool from smolagents. From small agents import. All right, let's go ahead and try this. Let's change the name to create my tool. All right, so we're creating a tool. Let's run these. So from that one. Let's give it a minute. All right, finish, great. So this is a lot of code, so I'm not going to type it up because it would take forever. I'm just going to copy it from the GitHub. Go here. And we've done this one already. And now we're working through this one here. Create your own tool. So we've done all these steps. That we're here. So this is the tool class. Okay. Copy it. We're just going to discuss it. So there it is. So as you can see, you can create your own class. HF model downloads tool. So basically the whole idea with this problem is you're going to, it's like a count. You want to count what's the most downloaded model that's a distilled or something like that from Huggingface 2, right? It's just some example. So here, the idea, you're going to have a name for the model. Notice that, as I said, there's class inheritance, so you're inheriting the tool object from the small agents library. The name, model download counter, right? That's the name of it. Then you have a description here as a parameter. So this is a tool that returns the most downloaded model of a given task on the Huggingface hub. It returns the name of the checkpoint. given the task. So it's actually a little broad, generic, right? That you can give it different tasks and it's going to give you different models for it. And with the use, um, yeah, of so you provide the description here. So that's the description. Then inputs for this. So it's going to be the task here, which is a type string, and the description, the task categories such as text classification, depth estimation, and so on. And then the output is also a string type. So that's kind of the definition of the model. And then here we have a forward function, which is what we're going to use. So you can see here the task is provided as a string. And then here you can just code. So basically what you're doing is you're writing some code, some from Huggingface hub, import list models. And then here you can see list models is the function that's doing all the work, but that's a Huggingface function, could be calculator, could be whatever it is, and then you're just wrapping code around it that is of a tool nature. You guys see that? But here you can, go in and tweak it as you see fit. Notice that this tool takes a filter, which is the task, basically. And that's how you plug in what type you're going to look at, sort by downloads, direction, and so on. And then it's basically find the model that you need, the element. So these are next and iter functions to move through it. All right, so then finally, once you found it, you print out the model.id. Okay, obviously, this might take you weeks to do, but once you do it, if there's a marketplace, you could sell your own. You never know. Right? So AI is going to take away jobs, but I do think I was actually going to make the joke on my somewhere on LinkedIn. I was going to put in AI agent, future AI agent tool developer as a new job. You know what I mean? Because there will be new jobs, and this is possibly one of them, right? And things like that. All right, so let's go ahead and run this class. All right, so we've done that. Okay, now that we need to instantiate it and give it a name. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to call that model downloads tool. Model downloads tool. And it's just that class, so I'm just going to instantiate that. Just like that, right? So model downloads tool, so I instantiate it as an object. Go ahead and do that. Yeah. And then now we're going to see an example of how to load a model. Like you can define the model that you want. So I'm going to do model equal Huggingface API model, right? And before we just did that and it grabbed one by default, but you can actually specify different ones if you'd like. So here I'm going to do model underscore ID, model underscore ID. And I'm going to still use Quen. So I think Quen is from DeepSeek, the same, it's associated with that same company, but I'm not sure. All right, so let's do double quotes Quen. And then Quen 2.5 coder, says writes Python 32 billion. Plus probably has 32 billion parameters. So it's not one of the largest, but it's not a 7 billion one either. And then instruct, right? Give it instructions. All right, so there you go. That's the model that we're using. So let's see if that works. Okay, no issues. And then now we're just going to instantiate the whole model. And I'm going to copy this because I think it cut out. All right, so we're going to basically, just like we did before, we invoke the code agent module. And we provide the parameters. So tools is going to be, if you notice, HF model downloads. We might try and also give it DuckDuckGo. Why not? I mean, see what happens. But you can give it multiple tools. And then notice that as a security precaution, there's a certain set of libraries that it's allowed to use, Python libraries. But you can give it more libraries if you wish, right? So also maybe to keep it from becoming too big in terms of memory, etc. So here you're providing the math library, pandas, requests, and beautiful soup for, right? And so you're providing these parameters, and there you go. So you define your agent there, code agent. Okay, good. So now the agent is ready. And remember, it should tell us the most downloaded model from the Huggingface. So it's actually going to Huggingface, looking for things, and providing an answer. So now let's run. And notice that the question is going to come via a prompt. So I'm going to do agent dot run. And I'm going to say to it, what is the most downloaded model? What is the most downloaded model for text classification? Do you see that? And it's obviously, we know it's going to go to Huggingface because that's the tool that we define. All right, so let's go ahead and try it out. Cross our fingers. All right, it's thinking, as you can see. And I do think this is thinking, right? Because it's like, when you're thinking, you might write something down and then you write something else down and you read those two things and you write something else down. And, I do feel it's like, they don't call it thinking. I think I don't know what they call it currently, but trees of thought, something like that. All right. So what is the most downloaded model for text? It finished for text classification. It used Quen, the one we asked it to. Notice it knows to use its tool. It said text classification, the most downloaded model. Okay, execution logs. It found that. Final answer, it says it is this tool from MS Marco Mini. I don't know if that's true or not, but that was the answer. Again, maybe it got it wrong, but the point of this was to show you how to create tools. It's up to your creativity to make them better. Does that make sense, guys? So you can see how you can actually create your own tools now, and perfect your skills. We can try something else, like maybe let's repeat this actually. Let's try it one more time. See if it gives us the same answer. Yeah, it gave us the same answer. What would be another category that we can ask it then instead of text classification? Image? Classification. ResNet 50 from Microsoft. Sounds about right to me, I would say. What would be something else for, let's say, image generation? I would say Flux is like one of a nice one, but let's see. Yeah, I would agree. Right? So from Black Labs, Black Forest Labs Flux One Dev. It's a really nice one. Do you have a question? Yeah, so there you go. That's an example of creating a tool. Any questions? Nope. All right, let me pause here.